What the f is wrong with people? What the actual f is wrong with people? Why would you do that? Hello, YouTube. Given the fact that we are all very thankful recently, I figured we should stop being thankful and watch something bad about every US state. I'm kidding. It's just something that's been requested a bunch, so I'm just now getting to it. Unfortunate timing, I guess. So let me know in the comments something good about the state that you're in, or something good about a state that, I don't know, brightened your day, just to balance out the current video that we're about to watch. And enjoy the reaction. As always, thank you for clicking.
Something bad about every US state, in no particular order. Hawaii is our most recent state added to the Big 50 in 1959. The US government had their eyeballs all over the little group of islands as a strategic military outpost in the 1800s, not to mention the sugarcane plantations. Freedom forbid any smelly European or Asian countries get their grubby paws on it, so with that in mind, as well as wanting to circumvent any potential sugar tariffs, a couple of US businessmen with a couple of US Marines pointed a couple of their US guns at Hawaiian King Kalakaua in 1887, forcing him to sign over power to the United States. But after the king Kame
say goodbye to Hawaii. That's such a nice touch.
Last Hame, his sister, Queen Liliuokalani, tried to regain power, but the US was all, ha! So one cuckoo kachu later, and the Republic of Hawaii was established in 1894, led by one Sanford Dole, whose cousin would go on to form the Hawaiian Pineapple Company, which would later become the Dole Food Company.
The more you learn. The pineapple slices from Dole, though.
If you've never had it, Dole Whip is freaking amazing.
Dole Whip? I don't think I've ever had that. No.
Highly recommend it. Ground zero for the 1918 influenza pandemic, the deadliest pandemic of the
Wait, so what's something bad about Hawaii? The way they joined? That was the bad part?
Modern world is widely believed to have been Camp Funston in Manhattan, Kansas. The camp itself was an army base training infantry in the closing months of World War I. Well, with failure to quarantine sick troops, the flu was definitely not just in Kansas anymore. Sickly soldiers were sent overseas where they oversneezed in Europe, spreading the flu worldwide. By the end of the pandemic around 1921, roughly 500 million people around the globe had been infected, with death toll estimates ranging from 50 to 100 million poor souls.
Oh
July
my
16th,
God.
1945.
Oh my God. Okay, I had a different idea of bad in mind when we started this video.
Saw the detonation of the world's first nuclear weapon at the Trinity nuclear testing site in the Jornada del Muerto desert in New Mexico. The successful detonation was the catalyst for the construction of the 2 atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan towards the end of World War II.
Jesus.
It's just a shame that thousands of New Mexico locals were never warned about the testing because they caught some heavy radiation dosages. Between the years of 1948 and 1975, the Aberdeen Proving Ground facility in Aberdeen, Maryland, hosted a wealth of unethical human experiments on U.S. Army soldiers. About 7,000 soldiers were experimented on, all without informed consent, meaning that they had no idea what they were getting into.
Oh my God!
The men were exposed to over 250 different chemical weapons, including mustard gas, deadly nerve agents, and psychoactive substances for the sake of researching effects, preventative measures, and medical treatments. Despite the lethality of some of these substances, dosages were low enough where no deaths were reported. These are getting dark really quick.
Yeah, that started off real dark, man. That started off real dark. Alright, Maine.
So here's a silly one. The Aroostook War of 1838 was a bloodless armed standoff between American and British-Canadian lumberjacks. While they slept all night and worked all day, there was a disagreement about where the US-Canadian border actually was. So both sides, eager to chop into the Aroostook River Valley's supple, sappy trees, got into a bit of a kerfuffle.
A bit of a kerfuffle? He says as he shows things. That's a lot of bitties. I'm not gonna show you my titties. I'm sorry, I don't know what else to rhyme with bitties.
True.
It caught me off guard! I was not expecting the honking! Oh my God, his edit edits are so good. Absolute cinema, yeah.
Were deployed, but no shots were fired and no lives were lost. Instead, everyone skipped and jumped home to cut down trees on their respective sides. The 1974 super outbreak was one of the most intense tornado outbreaks in recorded history, with 147 separate tornadoes formed in a 25-hour period.
What? What the hell happened back then? That's so crazy to think about.
Across 13 states, with Indiana being hit the hardest. 47 fatalities, 1,000 injuries, and hundreds of millions of dollars in damages were reported. That blows.
Blows. Stop. Oh, I do really like that. It's time for West Virginia.
Just slightly west of Virginia is West Virginia, home to the worst mining disaster in the history of the United States, so far. On December 6th,
What do you mean so far? And I also love the fact that we have Minecraft footage.
1907, the Fairmont Coal Company's number 6 and number 8 mine shafts in the town of Monongah went kablooey. 2 separate methane explosions instantly killed hundreds of workers in the mines and trapped any of those fortunate enough to survive, but their luck quickly ran out. The combined blast collapsed most of the existing cave structure and the ventilation shaft, blocking off fresh air and building up toxic gases which suffocated the trapped miners. The lack of any safety standards or respiratory safety equipment made rescue attempts hopeless. Only 5 men managed to be saved, with 362 lives lost. The tragedy sparked public outcry for stricter safety standards, and in 1910, the US government established the Bureau of Mines with the goal of reducing mining accidents.
Huh? There's a Bureau of Mines?
Though it had been a few decades before any safety standards would be enforced. Bet you don't yearn for the mines anymore, do you?
No, because I'm not a kid.
In 1879, members of the Osage Native tribe struck oil on their reservation. The US government did what it does and quickly swooped in to establish oil production and paid out royalties to the members of the Osage tribe, catapulting them to astronomical levels of wealth.
Sheesh.
That's when the mysterious deaths started. You see, Congress, not believing that the natives were capable of managing their wealth by themselves, appointed American businessmen and lawyers to look after their finances as legal guardians. Well, throughout the 1920s, some of these guardians began the systematic murder of 60 Osage natives in order to inherit their wealth.
Dude! The things people do for money and wealth is... Oh my god, so shocking.
Investigations were launched, becoming one of the first major investigations conducted by the FBI. If you want to read more about this, I highly recommend the book Killers of the Flower Moon. There was also a film adaptation done recently, but it apparently wasn't as good.
Wow, 3.2 on adaptation? That is pretty scary. Like, you know how people meme with like, if I win the lottery, there will be signs, but I tell no soul? I'm like, yeah. What if, but they know. Jesus. This is like so bad.
Louisiana.
The film just made up stuff, kind of overplay the whole thing. I mean, it kind of makes sense because it's a film, right? You kind of like have to exaggerate it for entertainment purposes rather than it being a documentary. But yeah. All right, what did you do? Why do you look like a child that was caught doing something really bad?
Early 1900s, there was a plethora of invasive water hyacinths just gunking up the local rivers. Not to mention a pervasive meat shortage. So in order to feed two birds with one stone, the American Hippo Bill was proposed to Congress. The bill would import African hippos to munch on the plants, only for said hippos to be subsequently munched on by Americans.
What?
Other animals were on
Wait, what? You guys ate hippos? Huh?
The list, including Manchurian pigs, African buffalo, Tibetan yaks, rhinos, and of course, dicks. Sadly, the bill never passed, thwarting American plans to deep throat delicious and nutritious dick meat. A series of
Someone saw that and were like, oh hell no, I'm not eating any dicks. I bet that's the reason it got denied. Oh.
Massive earthquakes completely rocked southeast Missouri in 1811. One 8.0 magnitude earthquake was so severe that it caused sections of the Mississippi River to flow backwards and several parts of the surrounding landscape to go all bleh. Some people died, probably. On April 12th,
whoa, that is crazy after effect of like an earthquake. What the heck?
1861, those gosh dang
South
Confederates
Carolina
bombarded Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina for 34 hours straight and 0 hours gay, marking the start of the United States Civil War, which would go on to claim the lives of nearly 700,000 people. The worst massacre in U.S. history involving a school
Michigan.
All the way back to 19...
I like how he said the worst massacre and then went involving a school. 1927. That's so soon. That's so not even 100 years.
27 in the small town of Bath, Michigan. Local disgruntled douche Andrew Kehoe used dynamite.
I mean, with a name like that, I'd be disgruntled too.
To destroy the Bath Consolidated School, an expensive upgrade to the local school district. The construction and maintenance of the school caused local property taxes to shoot up to account for operating costs. Kehoe, who was already on edge from his failing farming and political careers, as well as a terminally ill wife, had hit a breaking point with the steeper tax burden.
Makes sense,
Over the course of several months, Kehoe had managed to purchase multiple crates of dynamite, something typically used in farming at the time for stump and boulder removal.
Damn. It was that easy?
Hid them throughout the school.
For farms?
On the morning of May 18th, 1927, the dynamite was detonated, killing 38 in the process and injuring dozens more. While the chaos ensued, Kehoe had murdered his wife, destroyed his own farm, and drove to the school with his truck packed with more dynamite. He parked his car in front of the school and detonated the truck, taking himself and a few bystanders out with him. Luckily, though, a second hoard of dynamite within the school failed to detonate, preventing further loss of life.
Oh my
this single tragedy had claimed a quarter of the town's children.
A quarter of the town's children? Man, what does the children do? Like, I get that you're pissed about, like, life and everything, but damn. Can't you just blow it up on a weekend? They would drill holes in the stump and put a stick of dynamite and light it off. The more you learn.
California, the United States' sweaty ass crack, boasts the...
Why the sweaty ass crack?
Largest economy in the country, which is perfect, because that's what they need to constantly fund relief efforts for the thousands of wildfires each year burning millions of acres. In 2020 alone, California saw over 9,600 wildfires with almost 4.4 million acres reduced to char. Do better. Get wetter. Extremely heavy...
wetter! Poor California, man.
And frequent rainfall in 1926 through 1927 culminated in the Great Mississippi River flood of 1927. The big ol' river traveled across the land, flooding far and wide through several states including Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, and of course, Mississippi. Around 500 souls were washed away and several hundred thousands of people were displaced from their homes, resulting in upwards of $10 billion in damages. The U.S. Dakota War of 1862 in Minnesota resulted in the largest public execution in United States history. The people of the Dakota Native American tribe were pretty darn pissed as incoming settlers sought to manifest their destiny across the Midwest. After constant displacement and being on the brink of starvation due to poor farming and hunting conditions, the Dakota had just about enough. A small group of Dakota men had attacked and killed 5 settlers, including a man, his wife, and their teenage daughter. This escalated into a small uprising, which was stomped out by the U.S. Volunteer Army over the course of about a month and a half. Over 350 U.S. civilians were massacred, with 150 Dakota natives killed in the clash. After all was said and done, 400 Dakota men faced trial, with 303 sentenced to death, though President Lincoln did reduce this down to just 38 men sentenced for execution. These men received
that is a way drastic number between the two.
Short drop and a sudden stop in front of a public crowd on December 26, 1862. Since 2007,
Wow, the more you learn, man.
over 20 detached and decayed human feet have been washed ashore along the coast of the Salish Sea in northeastern Washington. The feet have been found in various shoes, supposedly protected from additional predation from scavengers. Several of the feet have been identified as remains of missing people or those suspected of ending their own life.
Look at the places where a human foot was found. What the fudge, man?
Within the area. Pretty sad, but hey, free shoes.
Free shoes? No!
Perhaps the worst lapse of judgment in the history of mankind, the city of Cleveland, Ohio organized Balloon Fest in 1986. The goal of the event was to break a world record of most balloons released simultaneously, but I guess no one realized that balloons don't rise in perpetuity. Shortly after the release of over 1.5 million inflatables, a storm system promptly blew the elastic spheres back to Earth, blanketing the city and polluting Lake Erie.
What the fudge? That was a thing? Why is there even a thing where you have a record of how many balloons are in the air?
Airplanes were grounded, fishermen went missing, waterways became clogged, and many lawsuits were issued. All
Jesus
in all,
Christ!
The cost the city of Cleveland over $5 million.
Oh my!
The people of Oregon.
That's so much money. People didn't think past the world record. Apparently. Humanity is really bored. You have to be.
Really hate it when you pronounce it as Oregon. $1 million. The people of Oregon really hate it when you pronounce it as Oregon.
Okay. I had to re-listen to that and realize the difference between pronunciation. It's kind of subtle,
So
though.
I've experienced.
That pronunciation hurt my soul. Nice video. As you saying it as Oregon hurts. The way he says it. Oh my god. I don't know. Now I'm afraid to say it. Oregon? Like that? That's how you're not supposed to say it?
But anyway, a few months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, a single Japanese pilot flew a secret mission to bomb the forests of Oregon in an attempt to divert war supplies. Incendiary bombs were dropped in the forests of Brookings, but in terms of damage, they didn't do jack shit. Thanks. After the war, the Japanese pilot, Nobuo Fujita, was invited back to Brookings as a guest of honor in order to make amends, which he hesitantly accepted. As a formal apology for his actions, Fujita presented the city his family heirloom katana, one passed down across 400 years, which is still on display in the Chetco Public Library to this day.
What's crazy?
Timothy Treadwell was a huge fan of wild grizzly bears.
Alaska!
Keyword being was. He spent about 13 summers living amongst them in Alaska, returning one final time towards the end of autumn.
But yeah, I don't know, like the Oregon one, was it that bad? I guess you could see it as bad, but again, the definition of bad is very loose in that one, I think.
The bears then became a huge fan of Timothy. One giant grizzly had attacked Timothy and his girlfriend, mauling and eating the couple. The bear was later shot and killed with an autopsy confirming human remains in its stomach. Fellas, don't befriend giant wild animals.
Don't befriend giant animals. Yep. Bears are not your friends.
I don't care how cute their ears are. They're wild animals. They will murder you. North Carolina almost became no Carolina.
Yeah. If you want to pick the bear, don't pick the bear. Resist the urge to pick the bear.
Carolina in 1961, after a B-52 bomber carrying a payload of 2 nuclear bombs headed towards the Canadian Arctic, experienced a catastrophic failure and broke up mid-air shortly after takeoff. The destroyed aircraft unintentionally dropped the bombs back down to Earth, with one falling from the plane as if properly deployed, initiating a sequence of safety switches for detonation. However, one final safety switch failed to actuate, saving North Carolina and a few surrounding states from becoming nothing more than a big black smudge on the globe.
Jesus Christ, man! That is insanity, man. It could have just been so bad.
The other bomb slammed into the Earth, but very luckily remained intact and relatively undamaged. Both bombs were rated as 3.8 megaton bombs. about 250 times more
Whoa.
powerful than those dropped on Japan at the end of World War II.
Oh my
The
god.
US almost accidentally nuked itself into oblivion.
That's crazy.
During the events of World War II, tens of thousands of Japanese Americans were relocated to several internment camps across the country out of fear of domestic attacks. One such camp was the Hart Mountain Camp in Park County, Wyoming, which housed 14,000 Japanese Americans during its 3 years of operation between 1942 and 1945. The camp boasted many activities, a poorly supplied school for children, a hospital, and many sports and social clubs, but, you know, they were
Camp stuff to do each other, not terrorism.
still forced to be there and heavily monitored. Way back before the US was even established, the English colony of Jamestown, Virginia was formed in 1607. Just a few years later, settlers experienced what is known as the starving time. The combined effects of the brutal winter of 1609, food shortages, devastating disease, and constant Native American attacks really screwed over colonists who resorted to pure desperation for survival. The colonists ate dogs,
cannibalism?
rats, their own shoes, and each other in order to survive.
They did
300
eat each
settlers
other?
saw the beginning of winter, but only 60 saw the beginning of spring. The state of Rhode Island
god. Damn. Rhode Island.
saw around 1,000 slaving voyages between the 18th and 19th century, bringing
How
in
many?
an estimated 100,000 slaves to the Americas. The year 1919 saw the occurrence of the Elaine Massacre in Hoopsburg, Arkansas. About 100 African American sharecroppers demanded fairer pricing for their cotton crops as they were frequently underpaid for their labors.
Damn.
During a meeting, which was protected by armed guards, two white men rolled up to find out what all the hullabaloo was about. After a brief struggle, some shots were fired, though it's unknown who shot first. One of the men died, the other injured. Well, word got out about the event being a supposed uprising being planned by the black community. In response, several locals and hundreds of US troops were deployed to put an end to the so-called rebellion, resulting in the cold-blooded murder of over 200 African Americans in the area. In 1903, residents of Van Meter, Iowa reported sightings of a strange bat-like humanoid figure for several nights. Dubbed the Van Meter Visitor, the bat-human dinosaur hybrid monster thing possessed big old flappy wings, sharp claws, and an eerily glowing horn on its melon. Many credible witnesses attest to the sightings, and locals, in true American fashion, shot at the creature in an attempt to kill it.
God damn it, America. God damn it. Why isn't the first solution shoot first, ask questions later?
It supposedly escaped into a nearby abandoned mine and was never seen again. In the early 1800s, Colonel William...
That's so weird! What do you mean, never seen again? Was it a person in a costume? I must know! You can't just leave that as is! You can't tell me a story and be like, oh yeah, we saw something that looked kind of like a bat-like creature, and then we shot at it and it ran, and never again. I'm like...
William H. Jackson once gifted his favorite oak tree its own deed, legally entitling it to its own ownership and all land within an 8-foot radius of itself. The original tree, located in Athens, Georgia, fell in 1942, but not before an acorn sprouted a new sapling, which legally inherited the land. Why is this bad?
Legally inherited the land! This reminds me of nut trees over here, because like, if an old nut has a offspring nut, and the offspring nut is old enough before you cut it off, you can't cut it off anymore because it's protected as well, and it's like, you just have land where you can't do anything.
That's because there's a chance that this tree owns more land than you do. The bond...
Oof. Ouch! Did you have to chat history? Did you have to?
Ville salt flats in northwestern Utah look like something out of a dream sequence. Back in the 1920s, with the evolving technology of automobiles, adrenaline junkies would often challenge each other to travel across the flats as fast as possible. Of course, this inevitably led to numerous crashes, breakdowns, and deaths, a tradition that persists to this day. The Silk Strike of 1913 in Paterson, New Jersey was the organized strike of over 25,000 silk workers with the goal of establishing an 8-hour workday and better working conditions. Over the course of the strike's 5-month duration, 300 silk mills had shut down with no workforce, and over 18
Silk my dilk! Anger!
100 strikers were arrested for inciting violence. Ultimately, the strike was defeated as influence failed to spread beyond Paterson and no demands were ever met. Speaking of
No
terrible
demands
working
were met, even though it was a 5-month strike. That's a very long time for like factories and stuff and businesses. That's crazy that they didn't manage to change anything.
conditions, the Radium Girls of Ottawa, Illinois were tasked with hand-painting watches with self-luminous paint made from radioactive powdered radium. The women
What?
would often point their brushes with their lips to produce
Oh,
finer tips,
no.
but their lips inadvertently sipped the radioactive drips, and if one dared to skip the lip tip grip, their managers would flip, so tips remained dipped and their lips remained zipped. Company owners expressed the safety of the
no.
material, but actively avoided it themselves. The ingestion of the radium, unsurprisingly, caused multiple women to contract radiation poisoning. Between the years of 1917 and
Ouch.
1927, over 50 women had died from acute radiation syndrome. This sparked public outrage and reforms in labor rights. Radium continued to be used in the production of watch dials up to the 1970s. Multiple
That's
residents outside of
crazy.
Exeter, New Hampshire, all reported seeing the same strange light pattern in the sky across several evenings in 1965. The large object reportedly moved silently across the night sky, emitting eerie red lights in a specific pattern. The event terrified locals in the area for years, though skeptics have debunked this event as simply a mid-air refueling drill performed by the United States Air Force. Specifically,
a refueling
KC-97
drone?
tankers flashed red lights in the same exact pattern that was described by eyewitnesses. The city of Wilmington, Delaware.
Oh my goodness. Can you just imagine you're just minding your own business and you just see red lights in the sky and you're like wondering what the heck is happening?
Delaware experienced a catastrophic outbreak of cholera and typhoid fever in the late 1800s thanks to rapid
What?
industrialization shitifying up the local water sources.
Oh no!
With hundreds sick and dozens
Dude.
dying, the city had to drastically overhaul the local sewer system, including installing a water purification plant in the early 1900s. But at least you can breathe a fresh sigh of relief nowadays.
Damn.
This is a
Is the place still like fucked over? Or has it started recovering?
devil's hole pupfish, a critically endangered and
Nevada.
supremely cute species of fish found only in the Devil's Hole in the Death
What?
Valley National Park in Nevada.
Seriously? That's the only place you can find them?
Or Nevada for the locals. The fish were first discovered back in the 1940s and were almost immediately attempted to be protected. In 1967, they were officially listed as endangered thanks to local drilling by development companies, which reduced
Oh
water levels within
my.
the cave system. Despite aggressive conservation efforts, there were only 38 of the little guys in existence as of spring 2025, making them one of the
Oh
most critically
my
endangered
God.
species on Earth. The Great Jacksonville
Damn! They're almost extinct at this point?
Fire of
Nevada,
1901
protect your
completely
fish,
reshaped the
please.
city of Jacksonville, Florida. After a rogue kitchen fire broke out, the flames quickly spread to a nearby mattress factory.
Is it weird that the first thing that came to mind was literally a rogue figure with like a pot of fire just running from rooftop to rooftop?
For more than 8 hours, the inferno finally came under control after completely engulfing the majority of the city, destroying almost 2,400 buildings in the process, rendering 10,000 people homeless and 7 people dead. Now that's what I call a fire sale. Farmers in the late
Damn.
1960s
Rogue
and
fires,
early
man.
1970s were pretty pissed to find their precious moo cows slaughtered and mutilated beyond natural means.
What?
Investigations clocked in over 8,000 separate mutilations over the years.
8,000?
Some of the bulbous bovines were found to have sedatives in their systems, while
What?
others were secretly marked with fluorescent paint. Unidentified aircraft in the area were spotted, suggesting government interventions or possible secret weapons testing, but no conclusive evidence was ever found.
What the
19th
heck?
century Philadelphia, Pennsylvania saw the rise of several teeth thieves who would go around robbing
Teeth?
graves of entire bodies.
Grave robbing for teeth?
The corpses would be sold to nearby medical schools for anatomical study, while the teeth were extracted and sold to companies who made dentures. Remember to smile.
What?
Kentucky is home to the McCoy family, one half of the
What the fuck? The things people do for money honestly baffles me. It honestly baffles me.
infamous Hatfield-McCoy family feud. Initial squabbles began in the 1870s over the Civil War, with the Hatfields being Confederate sympathizers and the McCoys being pro-Union. Across 30 years, multiple lawsuits, thefts, and even murders escalated
I actually
the feud,
know
with
about
over a
this one.
dozen family members killed. The feud finally came to an end in the late 1890s. Or did it? About 100 years after the start of it all, descendants of the families came together to duke it out on the game show Family Feud in 1979, with
That's
the
why I
McCoys
know
coming
about
out on
it.
top. Nowadays, the family homes are tourist attractions, holding annual festivals with activities like tug-of-war and sight tours to commemorate the decades-long dispute.
Okay, that's hilarious. I didn't know that they actually held that. That is amazing. That marketing. What the heck?
Just north of South Dakota is North Dakota, and boy did it suffer a harsh winter in 1936. Record low temperatures plummeted all the way down to negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
negative 51°C for you foreigners. The
Yeah,
frigid
that's a-
forecast froze farm fauna fleeing for favorable feverishness. Entire towns burned through their coal supplies, leaving families to die in their homes from exposure.
Jesus.
In 1847, nearly 200 Dutch immigrants made their way over from the Netherlands to Wisconsin in search of a better life, but a similar cold climate. After months of crossing the Atlantic and scooting in through to the Great Lakes, the
Wait. That was actually a reference to Sam? To Salmonella? I was like, it looks familiar, but maybe it's just a coincidence. That's cool.
Freaky Deaky Dutch were just about to set foot in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, when
Okay.
a poorly maintained boiler overheated, causing a fire to erupt on board the very wooden ship.
What?
Unfortunately, the ship only had 2 lifeboats, capable of holding about 20 people each.
Oh
Of
no.
the few hundred people aboard, only 45 managed to escape on the lifeboats. The
Oh,
Phoenix,
God.
ironically, went down in a blaze, never to rise from the ashes.
That is-
'Cause
That is very ironic naming and everything, but also, can you imagine fighting to claw your way onto the boat?
they were
That is
washed
horrible.
away. Mysterious deaths surrounding the Ray family had caused concern for the townsfolk of Jewett City, Connecticut. The supposedly healthy family members were stricken down left and right from an undetectable killer. The boys of the family became paler by the day and were seen coughing up blood until ultimately
What?
passing away within the coming days. The reasonable cause
my
of death,
goodness.
the townsfolk thought, was vampires. In order to stop the undead from rising and killing others, the recently deceased were exhumed from their graves and burned. The real
What the
culprit? Tuberculosis.
That's so
Conveniently
fucked
enough,
up.
though, the burning of the corpses probably did prevent the contagious disease from spreading any further. Go figure.
That's incredibly lucky for all the wrong reasons. Paws? What? I was never in Connecticut. I've never been to the US. It wasn't me.
In 1855, the US government approved the import of several camels to serve as pack animals through the arid landscape of the Southwest, formally establishing the United States Camel Corps. But then the Civil War broke out a few years later in 1861, and the camels were either sold off or completely abandoned in the desert, supposedly being spotted over the next several decades. Roam free, fellas. Boston, Massachusetts is home to the deadliest nightclub fire in US history. The Coconut Grove fire burned itself into people's memories in 1942 with a wealth of poor safety choices leading to the brutal blaze. Exit doors were chained up to prevent unauthorized access.
List of dumb shit decisions. Oh no. We had such a situation with a club fire recently too.
Air conditioners were filled with flammable refrigerants, and everyone was packed in like sardines. Not to mention the fact that all of the lavish interior decor could catch fire faster than a witch in Salem.
Ouch.
In all, 492 people ended up dying in the
Jesus.
inferno. The club owner, Barney Walensky, who was very much aware of his club's safety code violations, was convicted on just 19 counts of manslaughter and was sentenced to just 15 years in prison.
How the fuck do you spend less time in prison, like not even a year per death? How? How is that justice, man? Jesus Christ, that makes me mad.
Though he was pardoned after just 4.
Funny indeed,
He ended
yep.
up dying a few weeks after release from cancer. Now, when you're chilling in class,
Sometimes karma. Just saying, sometimes karma.
the last thing you want to experience is a big old gas explosion. But unfortunately, the students in the New London School in
Like, I don't know, man. Like, sure, it's corruption, right? I live in the Balkans. Romania has its fair share of freaking corruption and everything. But like, at one point, right? Like, how blatantly brazen of you do you have to be to like, how can you, if you're the judge in that situation, right? Like not even 1 year per one kill, and you're like sleeping soundly at night, I'm going like, oh yeah, I did the best I could.
New London, Texas, we're about to do just that. Alright class, who could tell me what happens when you hook a big chunk of magnesium into some water? Yep, Ron. That's an easy one. It just, after recently canceling their natural gas supply contract to save a few buckaroos, the school board decided to instead tap into a local gasoline waste line to supplement the demand. The shitty and shoddy plumbing work caused natural gas leaks throughout the school's basement crawl spaces.
What?
Now keep in mind that natural gas is colorless and odorless, so no one was really aware of any leaks, except for the students who complained of headaches, though they were ignored by the staff.
I don't have an experience with this at all after having headaches and having a gas leak in my own house. Yeah. Jesus Christ, man. Why would you do that to save money? Like, okay, so far, everything I've said why can be resolved with the simple solution of money. That's why. But it's greed is absolutely crazy.
You get out of here. Go on, get. The creeping gas cloud was inadvertently ignited on March 18th, 1937, causing an instantaneous explosion that killed 295 out of roughly 500 students and staff present in the building.
That is tragic. That is absolutely tragic and infuriating. My brother was the gas leak in your house.
The disaster led to a reform of requiring odorous additives to be added to natural gas supplies for better detection of leaks. If you're looking—
Interesting. So that was the reason why they started adding that for you guys. At least something positive came out of it, I guess. Although it is still a very, very tragic
for a breath of fresh air, New York City is probably not the best place to do so, especially in 1966. The Great New York City smog blanketed the Big Apple in a giant fart cloud of carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and smoke. The dense haze persisted for 3 days across the 1966 Thanksgiving
delicious
weekend.
Smog.
A public health study estimated that about 10% of the city's population suffered some adverse health effects from sucking in the smelly smog.
10%?
In the end, 168 New Yorkers ended up biting the dust, prompting President Lyndon B. Johnson and several members of Congress to produce the 1967 Air Quality Act and amendments to the 1970 Clean Air Act, which heavily reduced air pollution down to more manageable levels of toxicity.
Manageable levels? That tells me that the air situation is still really bad, man. That does not inspire confidence.
In the wake of the U.S. Civil War, the South was really hurting for some cheap labor as all of their slaves were just freed thanks to the 13th Amendment. The best alternative? Prisoners. Convicts were extremely cheap compared to full-time employees, so in the early 1890s, Coal Creek mine owners decided to lay off their workforce and instead conscripted convicted criminals to work the mines for pennies on the dollar.
That's so fucked up.
But instead of milling around, the recently sacked and salty miners decided to pick a fight, sparking the Coal Creek War.
They picked a fight with criminals?
Of 1891,
Convicted
the manic miners attacked a load of state prisons and mining properties, ensuring their efforts would not be in vain. The National Guard was called in, arresting over 500 workers. The scuffle did—
So they got arrested so they could go back to working just for less? I guess something is better than zero.
result in Tennessee ending their convict leasing program in 1896. So that's a win.
They actually won! Wow, I never thought that.
Sweet Home Alabama is home to Yellow Mama, an electric chair built
Alabama, what is wrong with you?
in 1927 by master carpenter and inmate Ed Mason. 152 criminals have gotten the sweet, stinging embrace of Yellow Mama's arms with her—
Why the fuck is an electric chair called Yellow Mama? First of all, why does it have a name? Second of all, why Mama? When I think of a mother, I think of loving embrace. And when I think of loving embrace, I don't think about loving embrace of an electric chair.
final zap being performed in 2002. Since then, death row inmates were given the legal right to choose their demise, either lethal injection or the chair. And to no surprise, they opt for the less painful option. As such, Yellow Mama remains locked away in the attic of the Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama, patiently waiting for her next victim. Imagine your
What
life
the
as a beaver,
fuck?
munching away on a tree
Alabama.
or building a dam, when all of a sudden you get yoinked away from your beaver family, put in a tiny box, flown up to the sky, and hucked out of an airplane to be parachuted down miles away
the
from home.
fuck?
That's exactly what the Idaho Department of Fish and Game did in 1948 after locals complained of excessive property damage.
What the fuck is wrong with people? What the actual fuck is wrong with people? Why would you do that?
76 beavers were relocated from northwest Idaho to central Idaho via airdrop using leftover World War II parachutes. One beaver died. Very sad. A big
What the fuck? I have no words.
A swarm of locusts tore across the Midwest in 1874, devastating any and all vegetation, food, clothes, and farming equipment for days on end, with Nebraska taking most of the damage. Water sources were contaminated and livestock were consumed. High estimates place the swarm size at upwards of 12.5 trillion locusts. I mean, there were quite literally a blanket of locusts a foot high off the ground. The swarm, spanning across 2 million square miles, reportedly blocked out the sun for multiple hours during their flight. By the time the locust plague had passed, the Midwest had sustained over $200 million in crop damages. Bennington Triangle, located across southwestern Vermont, saw several people disappear under mysterious circumstances between 1945 and 1950. The most well-known case being the disappearance of 18-year-old student Paula Jean Weldon, who up and vanished in 1946 and was never seen again. The young girl had reportedly left her college campus in the afternoon and proceeded to walk 6 miles to a nearby trail before going missing. Lack of substantial police investigation, evidence, or witnesses left the case cold. The poorly run investigation had prompted the Vermont legislature to create the Vermont State Police just 7 months after Paula Jean's disappearance. Hundreds of Lakota Sioux natives were gunned down during the Wounded Knee Massacre of 1890 after natives began expressing frustration and anger over continued forced relocation and broken promises from the US government. You suck. A new religious movement called the Ghost Dance, a literal dance performed in hopes of ridding the land of white settlers, was seen as a potential act of rebellion. That's scary.
Seriously? A dance? That's seen as rebellion?
I don't like that. As a precaution, natives were rounded up and disarmed by the US Army. A misunderstanding surrounding an accidental misfire of a rifle started the massacre, which saw the murder of about 300 native men, women, and children. Montana is home to one of the most famous archaeological hoaxes of all time, the Cardiff Giant. A quote-unquote petrified man supposedly recovered from a well in 1869 by 2 local workers. The giant hardened human stood
so many tragic stories, so many tragic backstories in the history, man.
Over 10 feet tall and weighed about 3,000 pounds. The giant acted as an attraction to which thousands of tourists flocked for 50 cents a pop, roughly $12 in today's money accounting for inflation. Visitors stood in complete awe at the supposed relic of human history as proof of how giants once roamed the earth.
Oh my god. People gawking at a statue is one of those things where you're like, okay. I'm glad I wasn't born during that time.
But in reality, the stone statue was just that, a statue. It was created by one George Hull in an attempt to show how easily the public could be fooled by fake artifacts.
Well, I guess his study was actually successful.
He constructed the statue and buried it in the aforementioned well, where, a year later, he instructed his unaware workers to dig it up as a genuine artifact. Well.
Oh my god.
After just 2 months of worldwide spectacle, Hull proudly confessed to the hoax as one big gotcha moment. The other one, a bunch of stupid idiots.
Did they kill him?
Well, there you go. That's something historically bad about every US state. If you want to hear some weird stuff,
but that concludes something bad. And so yeah, please let me know in the comments something good. Something good about your state or a state. I would appreciate it. YouTube, as always, it has been a pleasure. And I shall see you next time. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and thank you for liking the video and subscribing and commenting and just being here. Peace. Bye.